Welcome and good morning. You're watching the Lawrence County Oral History Project, and we want to welcome you into today's program. It's always good to have you watching, and we enjoy each and every program, and especially you tuning in. Thank you for watching today. Many people see me out at different locations, Walmart, Kmart, and local restaurants, so forth, and they always like to talk about the programs, about the old times, about the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And people enjoy talking about a variety of things, especially like when I've had my World War II guests on, or we talk about the Great Depression, even all the way up into the 60s. Just recently, one of the great actors of the 1960s, and he acted on up into the 70s and 80s, even into the 90s as well, Paul Newman. He has just passed away. I really like Paul Newman. He was when I think of one of my favorite movies, Cool Hand Luke. What a great actor, what a great job he did in that movie. And I always enjoyed Paul Newman, and I think of him as one of the actors of the 60s. My wife thinks of him later, like in the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, later on in the 70s, I guess it was. And but he was in a lot of years, even back before the 60s, of course, he was in movies. He was around for a long time, and a great humanitarian. I believe I read where his proceeds of his Paul Newman salad dressing and popcorn, all that, really just went to nonprofit agencies, and he gave a lot of money away. So he was a humanitarian, a race car driver, and support of that, and also a very good actor. But anyway, people like to talk to me about those old things, and we talked about some of the old Western stars in our last program, like Tom Mix, Gene Autry, and some of those, and we talk about the old TV shows and movies of the past. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back into 1960s for this, and when you see me out, or if you email me or you phone, call your answer in. It doesn't matter how you do it, but what we're going to do is for the listeners, or the watchers actually, those that watch this program, of the Oral County History Program, what was your favorite TV show in the 1960s? What was your favorite TV show in the 1960s? And it could be of anything. I mean, for some of you, it may be Get Smart, or Mission Impossible, or Bonanza, or my goodness, Rawhide, or Rat Patrol. I mean, Star Trek, there was a lot of them. But what was your favorite TV show of the 1960s? And we're going to just kind of have fun with that. Again, when you see me out, just let me know what your favorite one was, or give me an email or a phone call, and then in a future program, we'll talk about what the viewers of the Lawrence County Oral History Project, what their favorite program was of the 1960s. Again, we may do that for an actor a little bit later on, or actresses, or whatever, but this time it's just your favorite program of the 1960s. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you on that. Again, people send me emails and they say, yeah, we used to stay up on Sunday nights and watch Ed Sullivan, Bonanza, and Mission Impossible, and all those, so we know what you're talking about. Okay, well, okay, we're going to find out. What's your favorite of the 1960s? This gentleman that I have with me, Tom Kirkman. Tom, do you have a nickname?
Elsie.
Elsie?
Yeah,
well, I didn't know that.
That was comes from Ellsworth, my middle name.
Okay, that wasn't from Elsie the cow, or was there an Elsie the cow?
That was with an S. Mine was with a Z.
Okay, so you're Elsie.
Elsie, yeah.
Okay, well, I didn't know you had a nickname, Elsie.
Well, it's not.
I always knew you as the Avoca squirrel hunter.
Well, I have to give that honor up to my cousin.
Okay.
Bud Kirkman. His nickname is Squirrel, from being a squirrel hunter, yeah.
Okay, I remember one time you called when you played with the Avoca, the Victorian dancers one time when we danced for the soil conservation. Remember at Spring Mill?
Oh, yeah.
And I remember you said you were Tom Kirkman, the Avoca squirrel hunter. I thought that was an appropriate name.
Well, I have done that, yes. One always needs a squirrel tail for the radio antenna, or on the car, or
that's true,
or the handlebars on the bicycle, depending on.
Yeah. Did you actually ever put a squirrel tail on your bicycle?
Oh yes, on the handlebars. You'd have two.
Now, I don't remember that.
Yeah, well, that probably before your time, Norm.
Okay. Well, that's a new one for me. And even on the antenna of a car, did they put squirrel tails on
Squirrel
there?
tails, fox tails were the choice, but often you couldn't get those.
Uh-huh.
Coon tail second, and squirrel tail if that was the last resort.
Now, see, Tom, here, we've been doing this for an interview for about 30 seconds, and already I've learned something.
Well,
I mean, every time I'm around you, I learn something.
It's my turn, Norm.
Okay. Tom and I have been friends for several years, and his son Jeff has been a friend of mine for a long time as well. They won't probably claim that, but we have been. And Tom is an interesting person, and the type of people that we like having on the oral history program, because he's been around Lawrence County for a lot of years, and he knows a lot about Lawrence County history, specifically about Avoca. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about today. But before we get there, Tom, did you ever watch any TV in the 1960s?
Yes, I did. And most of it was, I liked Bonanza.
Uh-huh.
And, maybe it's dementia that has set in, but I don't recall too many of those shows from the 60s.
So if you had a favorite one, Bonanza probably rank up there, but if I'm going to give you a chance to give the first vote for your favorite TV show of 1960s, which one do you think that would have been?
It would have been Jack Parr.
Jack Parr.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that a variety show? It seemed like
It was a late night talk show, I think.
late night talk show. Well, see, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to give you the first vote. The Jack Parr. Was it called the Jack Parr Show?
I think it was called The Tonight Show. I think that's when it first got.
Oh, okay.
I think he was. Well, I don't. He was not the originator. I think there was one before him, but he was one of the earlier ones. Yeah.
Okay, so that was maybe early '60s when the
Yes,
Tonight.
yeah, early 60s.
Okay,
Yeah.
Tonight Show. You know, my father used to stay up and watch the Tonight Show, and I remember that. And he had to get up early, but he would watch the dialogue of Johnny Carson, and obviously Jack Parr. Did Johnny Carson take Jack Parr's place?
Jack Parr, Johnny Carson. I think, he followed Jack Parr.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Dad would always watch the monologue. He loved Johnny Carson monologue, and I can still hear him in there laughing about the monologue. And then he'd go to bed a lot of times, but he loved that. But Jack Parr was a comedian. He went way back in 1940, maybe 50s, and he went way back there, didn't he?
But I certainly enjoyed that. That was always a late night thing for me to get to kind of relax in a way. And then the monologue, that was had to do with current events and the ridiculousness of most of it.
Yeah. When we think about television back in the 50s and 60s, we think about the old antenna. And if the wind was blowing right, sometimes you got to watch your show. But if it was blowing wrong, you had some problems. In a storm, you had a real problem watching television back then.
Yeah.
But I can remember having to go out there and to readjust the antenna and try to get it if there was a certain show coming on, trying to pick up. You remember any of those times?
Oh yeah. What our big deal in Avoca was the Tincher family had moved there and had bought the old schoolhouse and were living in it. And they had one of the first televisions in Avoca.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a continuous weather forecast because there was always snow on it, But they had several chairs that they would assemble in one room, and all of us kids would sit around and watch the big TV. That was the thing.
About what year would that have been, Tom?
That would have been probably 51, maybe
51.
49, somewhere between 49 and 51.
Yeah. And they got the first TV, so that was something for the neighbor. I mean, that was someone finally getting a TV.
They may not have been the first one, but they certainly were up closer, and they were really the only ones that had all the neighborhood kids in that one room.
Around 1950 or so, yeah. I remember my dad talking that when he came back from Korea, landing in California and near San Francisco, I think it was, and of seeing TVs on in storefronts, and how that was really something back then to see TV. So, and now we just kind of take it for granted. We got hundreds of channels and cable and satellite, but back then to get 2 or 3 channels was really a treat.
That was.
Yeah.
In fact, you mentioned some of your earlier heroes like Tom Mixon, what have you. My baby sister, she was insisting on being a cowboy. And I recall seeing her on top of the shed roof with her cowboy boots on and her hat on. And she was the Cisco Kid.
The Cisco Kid, I remember that,
yeah.
sure.
And she picked up the name Cisco, so that's been her nickname through the years.
And that was because of the Cisco Kid?
The Cisco Kid.
Seemed like Cisco Kid had a partner there too, but I don't remember who that was either.
No, I had not.
Did you have a favorite person that you kind of looked up to back then?
Basically, yes. I had a cousin by the name of Bill Kirkman. He was always my hero. Seemed like everything he would do was proper, and he could get things done and this and that. And Bill is my neighbor today, and I still look up to him. Bill's in his 80s now, but he is quite a gentleman and always has been. I've just had a tremendous amount of respect for him through the years.
So he was a role model for you?
Bill was, yes.
Do you feel like you had several role models in your life?
Well, actually, about everyone in Avoca was a role model. You had different people you looked to for different things. There was the church groups, and then there was the scouts, and then your school buddies, and your basketball players that you teamed up with at the court. And but there was always someone that was there that was could help you with what you needed, and of course they were always turned out to be role models. So I can't say I had one particular.
You had several role models,
but just it was just a place to grow up where it seemed like everything was provided.
The small town of Avoca, not too many miles from Oolitic, not too many miles from Bedford, of course. Well, you say a couple, 3 miles from Oolitic, west of Oolitic.
That would be that. Yeah.
And this growing up in Avoca, we're talking about now what years that you were raised in Avoca?
I was born in 34, and I stayed there until 53, and then left there and went into the Army. And it took me a few years to get back to Avoca, but I managed, and so I'm willing to spend my life there, the rest of my life there, I guess. I have no desire to go anywhere else.
So you like being raised in Avoca?
Oh, yes. It has been just a wonderful place for me, because anything you want to do, you can do there. Some of the finest checker players in the world, I think, come from there. Horseshoe pitchers, baseball players, basketball players. It's just
all from Avoca?
All from Avoca. It's unbelievable the records they hold.
My goodness, it seems like that everybody important in the world has come from Avoca.
They are indeed. In fact, I think I was telling you maybe earlier that the town has improved so much since we got rid of Adam and Eve. It seems like everything is more pleasant now.
Well, back in 34, you were born during the Depression time.
Yes.
So now, obviously, you were real young when the Depression was going on and World War II was, coming into being. But going back to back those early days when you were a child, then tell us a little bit about your mom and dad.
They were kind of unique folks. They were in love all their life. There were 7 of us children, and around the table, the 9 of us together. There was always plenty of food, and we got our first radio, and I don't recall when that was, but we would be sitting there, and a particular song would come on that Mom and Dad liked. And without saying anything to the children or anything, they would get up and dance to that tune and sit back down at the table and finish the meal. We had a pleasant child life. It was not uncommon to come in the house after school. Dad would be holding Mom in a rocking chair, rocking her. It was just a house full of love,
and that spilled over into the children.
Yeah, and in fact, of the 7 children, we've just had a wonderful life together. I often wish that Mom and Dad had 14 children. I think that my life would have been twice as good.
Well, 14 children, the house got kind of crowded. Did you live right in Avoca there?
We had a house just west of Avoca, and when the Depression came, Dad owed $500 on it, and the bank took that house. So we went and lived in a chicken house, and Dad found 40 acres for $500. And he had an old friend, a school teacher friend by the name of David Davis, Mr. Davis out in Springville. And he went and borrowed $500 from him to get the 40 acres.
And this was a chicken house?
Yeah, and so...
You lived in a chicken house?
We cleaned it.
But the chickens were gone?
Well, we had to clean up after the chickens.
Okay.
And then we papered the walls with newspaper. And Mom had a few little pieces of linoleum, but there was no partitions in the chicken house, but each piece of linoleum, that one was a bedroom, one was a kitchen. But so we kind of had a road map where we should be when we were eating or sleeping or this or that.
Well, how many rooms did you have in this chicken house then?
One room.
One room?
One room.
And how many kids at this time?
Seven children,
okay.
Yeah. And
okay.
Then from there, Dad, on the 40 acres he managed to get, there was enough poplar timber there that he was able to build a log house, and it had an upstairs, so that gave us a little more room. And we lived there through the war years, had a nice fireplace, and had a nice cellar. We always had, Dad loved the garden, we always had plenty of strawberries in the cellar, and canning was a big deal. Mom always had to have a 100 quarts of blackberries for the winter, which made a lot of pies and cobblers. And I recall one incident, and of course it was the boys' job to pick the berries, and we loved to swim in the quarry holes. And we wanted to go swimming, and Mom said, not till you pick the berries, get your buckets full of berries. So we had 2-gallon buckets, and we rushed off and went sideways near the woods and picked up enough leaves, filled the buckets up with leaves, went to the berry patch and had to put a little covering of berries over them, brought the buckets back and set them on the table. Of course, after we had gone, Mom found out what we had done.
Uh-oh.
And that kind of put the stops to swimming for a while. There was some heavy picking berries there.
Yeah. Well,
but anyway, we always had food. Dad loved the garden, and we had chickens and pigs. We always butchered and cured hams and bacon. And I still love to do that. I recall those were good times for Tommy.
Yeah. What did your dad do during this time? What was his occupation?
He was a fireman on the little narrow gauge railroad that ran from Bedford to Bloomfield. And when the Depression hit, he lost that job, so he didn't have anything. I was thinking yesterday, after he lost that job, there was really nothing to do, but you could sell cross ties, and he would hew cross ties in the woods and carry them out for a nickel a piece, 5 cents a piece. And I was thinking the other day, it would take him 80 cross ties to get a gallon of gas today.
My goodness.
So things have changed.
And how long would it take him to finish a cross tie?
He could get 5 or 6 a day, 5 or 6 a day.
That would have been working at it pretty good.
Yeah, it was. But
and just doing that by himself?
Yeah.
And he got a nickel for that then?
Yeah.
Doing one?
Yeah.
And so that's what he did after he lost his job then during the Depression years?
Yeah, and I was looking at his tax returns for 38, and in that year he made 30, so he filed taxes on $36.
$36.
Yeah, so it's not too bad for 7 kids.
Yeah, that was pretty rough.
Yeah.
But did you know it was rough times did your parents talk about that during?
No, we
during
didn't.
That time
Not really. You maybe go months and never see a coin of any kind, a penny, nickel, or dime. But there was always food. Men always loved to hunt. They always loved to talk about the guns they hunted with, the dogs they hunted with. And in Avoca there were 3 or 4 loafer benches, and the men with not having work, well, they would sit on the loafer benches most of the day. They would switch benches just to switch topics of conversation. I recall one gentleman by the name of, his nickname was Roughhead. I don't recall what his real name was. Roughhead Turner said he remembered the day, the hour, the minute, and even the second that the Depression was over. He said there was a possum running up the middle of the road there in Avoca, and there wasn't one man got up off a loafer bench to chase it. So
so he knew it was getting better times.
Yeah, better times were coming.
Well, that possum made it all the way through. That's a good story. What was the community like in Avoca? What were the people like during that time, Tom?
Norman, I think people have always just been people. I know there were always big get-togethers. I know at the fish hatchery there was an annual sheep roast. They would roast 5 or 6 sheep, and there would be hundreds of people there. And the fish hatchery was always a place together. At that time, there were huge willow trees, very shaded all around the ponds, and the cool spring water. And it was just for the summertime, it was just a cool place and an enjoyable place to be. Then, of course, they had their church all-day gatherings. Each one did. Speaking of churches, sometimes they would get along well, and sometimes they wouldn't. I recall when electronics got a little more available. One church on one hill had a thing that they'd play before services each Sunday morning, and they would broadcast out over the little valley there.
A song, was it, or?
We have kind of chimes and that kind of thing.
Okay, all right.
And then the church on the other hill, they thought the other one was getting a little ahead of them, but this guy, they had a electric guitar with an amplifier, so he would play off the other hill. Well, it got to the point where it was kind of like a battle of the bands rather than. Avoca has always been a very interesting place, a different thing, but most wonderful people really. They just.
So when they would have these all-day gatherings, then they would just kind of have dinners on the grounds and things like that.
It'd be fried chicken and green beans. Anything you could think of, everybody would bring it.
Whenever, but people, like I say, people were people. But did you find that people were? I've always thought about Lawrence County, good people. That I've always, and I've lived around Lawrence County for a lot of years, and really, whenever the times are there, people came through in a lot of ways. What was your experiences with that? Were people willing to help? These were difficult times, of course, Depression, World War II, and how did you find people then?
The story that stands out in my mind and for my family was we ran out of food. And Dad had decided that it was necessary to feed the family. So he took his pistol down and off to rob a store. And on the way through Avoca, his uncle saw him going by and hollered at him, told him he wanted to talk to him a minute. And Dad went up to his porch, and my great uncle handed Dad 3 $1 bills. That was a bundle of money then. So Dad took the pistol back home, went back to the store, but just things like that would occur for no reason. But at that particular time, the timing and all, in that, another incident I recall was the broom Mom had. It was a straw broom, but there wasn't a straw on it. It was just a handle with a glob there.
The straws were already worn off by then.
And my folks were religious folks. They and I heard one night my mom praying for a broom. Lord, send me a broom. And the next morning, go out and up on the bank, I could see this red thing in the yard there, and it was a red bird broom, brand new broom. Well, I thought a miracle had happened. Well, one of the neighbors, of course, had seen what Mom was trying to use and had been to town and just threw a broom off the side of the truck there as they went by. But anyway, things like that.
Sure seemed like a miracle then, wasn't it? To get a new broom like that.
But people looked after one another, this and that, and we wouldn't have made it without that. We did our part, they did their part, and it was just well, actually, I enjoyed it. I really did.
So when you look back on it now, I mean, that's very pleasant memories for you.
It was, Norman, to me, I would live it much more quickly than I would today's life. It was just, the atmosphere was all. It just demanded some kind of a love or a fellowship or this or that.
Tom, what did the town, whenever I think of Avoca, of course I think of the fish hatchery. I mean, that's what a lot of people are going to think of now when they think of Avoca. What did the town look like back then?
The physical features there in Avoca, they had the big spring at the fish hatchery, and then they had a mineral spring, kind of like a French Lick or French Spring. I don't know why we didn't turn out to have our own casino, but we didn't. But we do have a mineral spring, and I don't know if anyone else would know where that is today, but I keep it marked.
The
and
Mineral Spring. You know where that's at?
Yes.
Okay.
And at that time, growing up, it was always clean, and they had a tin cup hanging there, and people that didn't feel well or needed a little shot of that type of water could go there and have a cup of that. But the town kind of grew up around those two things, I think. But there was two housing additions. The first one would be on the southern end of Avoca, called the Bridgeville addition, and then on the northern end was called the Zimri Bennett addition. And about all the houses were three-room houses. All of them looked identical almost. And then occasionally there was someone would try their hand. I was counting the other day. I think between Dad and myself and my grandfather, I think there's 8 of the houses we built still standing in Avoca. But there's not too much building going on there right now. But growing up there was people would cut stone or do this or do that, and all the kids would be hanging around, see how it was done, and this, that. You learned without really noticing how to square and saw a board, how to square a foundation. It was just, I guess, our own little bowhead. I don't know. I don't know how would you call it. But anyway, there was always something you could learn, something you do.
Where the Avoca Fish Hatchery is at there, Tom, what would that have looked like back then? Now, when actually did the Avoca Fish Hatchery come into being?
The 1924, the family sold that to the state. I say the family, it stayed in the Bridwell. My great-grandmother was a sister to the guy that bought it, Hayden Bridwell. He had inherited most of the family's money up on towards Springville and bought that the mill there. The mill was started by Fitzpatrick, who happened to be the father-in-law of a guy by the name of Hamer that made Springville Park, and he also had one there.
Yeah.
And
now where was that located, that mill at that time?
The mill was located right at where the big spring is, behind the fish hatchery house.
Okay.
And the first mill burned in 1865 after the Civil War, and then they rebuilt it shortly after that, and then put in a turbine. It originally had an overshot wheel. Then the second mill, they put in a turbine. Had 3 birds. They could grind flour, grind corn, and call it chops, cattle feed. But,
a lot of our people are not going to be familiar. Actually, I'd heard this, that Hammer did have a mill, because we always do associate Hammer with Spring Mill. But that Hammer actually did have a mill in Avoca and there at one time. And it was very active at one time, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It did a good business. And the house been directly across from where the fish hatchery house was. It was framed up out of material out of the old mill. So some of the lumber and stuff of the old mill still exists in Avoca. I don't.
Okay, so it's still there then.
Yeah.
I believe you told me one time that the house, the large house that is there as you come into the fish hatchery, actually, was that an inn at one time, a stagecoach inn or something? What was that there, Tom?
The Hammers built that house in 1823, and they just more or less used it for a home. And then after they sold it, they used it for a store, and then it finally became a post office there. Then it was used as a hotel. In fact, my grandmother came from Linton to work at that hotel, and that is where my grandfather met her at that time. And then, but that it has served as a hotel, a store, a post office. It had a lot of them.
So that goes back. About when would that have been built? That house?
1823. It's supposed
1823.
to be one of the oldest frame houses in Lawrence County.
Okay, good.
And it's made out of poplar wood. They later on they put in hardwood flooring on that, and Mr. Spoonmore, who took care of the fish hatchery, noticed one day a bunch of termites were taking up the floor. Well, they tore the oak flooring out, but the termites had not bothered any of the poplar flooring, so it was just a matter of replacing the floor.
Okay.
But the sills in the floor are supposed to be 3 by, I think, 10 or something. They're very big, but it's a well-built house. And I recall them telling me that one time they were going to paint it. And they had paint shipped in by rail, and they pulled the paint over to the fish hatchery house on sled by a couple of mules, and the men got around talking this and that, but then the mules got all tangled up in this and that and turned the paint over in the yard. So the house went a few years there without paint.
Well, there was tracks that used to go through Avoca there then at one time?
Uh-huh. It was first a narrow gauge, and then later on it was widened to a regular gauge. Then.
Right.
And the narrow gauge track, well, in fact, the tracks were taken up during the war, I guess for the war effort. They needed the steel, this and that. And, but I still have spikes from the narrow gauge and from the regular gauge track. The one was a little bigger than the other.
Right.
But I'm kind of a guy that likes to pick up things at Avoca and keep them.
Right.
I'm afraid those old Liddick boys will get them.
Yeah, no doubt. The trains, you kind of always had a fascination. You always liked trains, haven't you, Tom?
Yeah, I have.
And now and of course, your dad was a railman for a while, so that probably helped prompt your interest in it, didn't it?
And another thing, my family in 1906, my grandfather and his brothers and sisters rented 3 boxcars, sold everything they had in Avoca, and went to California to live. And they were out there about maybe 6 months at the most, and homesick, and came back to Avoca.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and,
yeah, everybody here gets back there, don't they?
Yeah, everybody got to get back to Avoca. Yeah.
The town back then, it had, you talk about this, having like a post office at one time there in this location. Were there stores or gas stations? What was the makeup of the town back then?
We had, in my childhood, we had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had four grocery stores. One was run by D.A. Franklin. One was run by Tom Kirkman. One was run by Ben Bridwell, and one was run by Henry Cecil. Yes. Which reminds me of a story. I'd like to tell that.
Go right ahead.
Henry and his wife Edith were very fond of cats, and their store had you could tell there was cats around when you walked in. And their favorite cat was named Dauncey. Dauncey was a big old yellow tomcat, and they just favored him to no end. And a few of us boys were out riding bicycles one day, and we happened onto where a car had run over a big old yellow cat, just flattened out. Mm-hmm. So we took the yellow cat back to Avoca, stole Dauncey that night and put him in a box, put the yellow cat that had been run over out in front of their store. Broke their heart. It broke their heart. They had a funeral for Dauncey and this and that. And we kept Dauncey fed and watered for a couple of days, and then we turned him loose back at the store.
So then all of a sudden they'd buried Dauncey, but then Dauncey shows up?
Another miracle occurred in Avoca.
Well, this is a place of miracles, isn't it?
Yeah, yes it is.
Yeah,
it's on and on.
So Dauncey shows up afterwards. Did they ever find out that you guys did that trick?
No, and I wouldn't even tell it now unless Henry's been dead almost.
Well, now everybody in Avoca knows that now, so their ancestors.
Very few would know Henry or Dauncey.
But Dauncey showed up at 2 days later.
Showed up,
what was the? Do you know what that was like for them?
That was a joyous occasion. They said.
You got it back. That's a good story. So there were one time maybe 4 stores. You
Four stores and a filling station. Mm-hmm. Actually, there were 2 filling stations there, one across the road from the other. Mm-hmm. And then in the grocery store they had pool table, a lot of checkers played. Mm-hmm. That's where I became a championship checker player. Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah.
And where did they play checkers at? Was it inside the store?
Inside the store.
Have potbelly stove?
I don't recall. I bet there was, but I don't recall what kind of heat was on there. But the filling station extended out over the creek, and for a little entertainment, when the creek would get up, I would jump out the back door in the creek for a bottle of pop. I didn't have money to buy a pop, but I could jump in that swift water and float down the creek.
And they would give you a bottle of pop for that.
A bottle of pop,
yeah. Well, I guess entertainment was kind of hard to come by back then.
It was, yeah.
If you would go into town, would that have been and out of Avoca? Would that have been Old Liddick or Bedford or what?
Usually on Saturday we would go to Bedford. Our neighbor had an automobile, a guy named Charlie Rollins, and we would, he would haul us into Bedford, and we could do some shopping there and this and that and what have you. And, but he would always leave at a certain time, and that's when we would have to meet back at that car or walk from Bedford. So it was a matter of getting there.
Yeah. And that was with the old Highway 37. It wouldn't have been as quick to get to Bedford as it would be now from Avoca.
No, we the lanes weren't as many.
What would you do in Bedford on a Saturday night?
Saturday night was a big deal.
If you can talk about that.
Yeah, no, that was a big deal. And I shouldn't tell this, but my brother Joe, he's always kind of liked to bet a dime here and there. But if we could find a dime, we'd rush to the pool hall, Caddis's Pool Hall in Bedford. And he would make side bets with the dime, and it would not be long until we had money to go to the movie and have a Coke and a popcorn. He would never let me do that because I couldn't win anything, but he was getting to go to the pool hall, getting to go to the theater, and then later getting to go to the roller rinks. Then later when we got automobiles, it was to go to the drive-in and circle the drive-ins for 3 hours and then go back to Avoca.
And where were the drive-ins at then?
Was
that the Bedford drive-in?
The Bedford drive-in, yeah. And then there was a little drive-in restaurants here, one down on Washington, and then, but it was, kids always have something to do, no matter what. Yeah.
Well, was the square at that time the Bedford Square? Or did you ever go up on? Was there anything ever going on up there then?
There was one of the earliest things I recall there on the square was medicine men. The guy would come on Saturday nights and he would wrap chains around his chest and break them and this and that. And you could do that too if you'd buy his medicine. But I never had money to get into that. So I've just not broken too many chains in my life.
That's kind of interesting. That the medicine men, how they came in and would kind of set up a little stage, right? Yeah, and then they had some kind of elixir that they would sell.
Then also a guy by the name of Alan Rollins bought furs. So there was always a lot of people on Saturdays bringing furs in to sell and make some money. That was, and then to get to go out on the courthouse lawn there and sit on those big cannons. Those were huge things to me.
Back, people can't hardly remember, and they don't think about that much, but around the square, that was really the hub of life around there, and that was a big thing. That's the first time I've heard about the medicine men shows, though, that actually set up there, and the other thing, but I do remember people talking about bringing their cars in, parking it early in the morning, just so they would have a seat to watch everybody go around the square and stuff in the evening.
Normally it would be 2 rows of people going one way around the square and 2 going the other way, and it was just absolutely packed, crowded, full, stores full, this and that. It was a completely different atmosphere. And if you left a parking spot, you forget it because you will never get it back.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Right.
And then, but people would just drive round and round and round for. Of course. Gas was $0.10 a gallon if you could do that then.
Yeah, I was just wondering what was gas back then. Do you remember, Tom? How much did it cost?
One of the first jobs I got in Bedford was working for a guy by the name of Joe Tosti and at a filling station, and gas at that time was 19 cents a gallon, and it was standard. It was premium gas. So
19 cents.
19 cents.
And today, I think last night I paid $3.68 for it. So if someone's watching this a few years from now, then again, this is October the 2nd of 2008. Gas is $3.68. This was back in about what year? And that was 11 cents?
This has been 1950.
1950, so it was 11 cents. So it's raised a little bit since then. Well, Tom brought some great pictures, and I want to make sure that we get to look at these. We have at times touched on schools that are no longer in existence on this program. Not too long ago, we talked about the Bryantsville School that, again, is no longer in existence. This is a school that is no longer in existence. This is the Avoca School, and this is a great picture, 1911. And Tom, talk about the school a little bit. Did you go to the Avoca School?
No, I had to go to Needmore School now because...
Okay, now be nice. There's need more people that listen and watch this program.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would just happen to be on a particular line that if you were on one side of the street, you went to Needmore. If you were on the other side, you went to Avoca.
Okay.
So, but Needmore had a high school, and those that finished the 8th grade at Avoca, then they attended Needmore then to finish their high school. And
so you never went to the Avoca school? Then?
No, but spent a lot of time there, played a lot of ball there, and it was just a...
And that was what, grades 1 through 8 that went there?
1 through 8, yeah.
And how about, you happen to remember how many schoolrooms that would have had by any chance? Do you?
Oh, there was 4 downstairs, and I believe a couple upstairs. So
okay.
Yeah.
And eight grades went through there.
Yeah.
Now after then, so these kids went to Olytic then from Avoca?
They went to Needmore.
They went to Needmore.
Yeah,
Okay.
They were
Okay.
in the Marshall Township.
Right. I'm going to put this picture back up again because I probably took it down a little bit too early. Who are the people that you know in this picture here?
Well,
1911 again.
I have my father and my uncle and my dad's first cousin there, and then there's some, those would be Kirkmans, and then there's Eddingtons in there, Eddington boys, and a lot of Turners, McDonald's, just a smattering of everyone within a mile of there that could get to it. Yeah.
I noticed that the girls all looked like their Sunday go-to-meeting dresses on.
Oh, yeah,
they all were all dressed up, weren't they?
That was been a big day planned. The pictures will be taken tomorrow. You know, I'm sure there was ears washed and hairs combed and this and that.
Tom, when would this school, where was it located at?
Oh, it would be located just north of where the Avoca Baptist Church is now, in their parking lot.
Okay.
In that area.
So there's no signs at all that,
None that I know of.
nothing
No,
that.
no.
And do you know about when this school would have been existed until what year it would have finally quit having children?
I'm going to say probably somewhere in the early 1880s it would, and then I want to say at about probably 48 or 50
When it finally quit having.
Quit having.
So you think the school, it was around 1880 then, probably about when it was built or started as a school?
Yeah. It may have been a little earlier than that, but in my mind, I think that would have been.
I'd love to see these pictures of the old school because they're no longer in existence. A lot of people watching this program maybe didn't even know there was an Avoca school, but this held a lot of memories for people for over the years.
Yeah, it has.
That's a great picture.
My dad managed to get 3 years in there, and then his parents died, and that was the end of his schooling. Mom, after they were married, she taught him to read. But he did all right. He was superintendent at Camp Atterbury on that job, and
so he
one at Charleston, Indiana. He had a lot of, finally got his life together with that.
Right. This is another good picture. We always like to show the pictures that this was taken in the summer of 1939. Talk a little bit about this photo here, Tom.
The gentleman on the left is Joe Kirkman. He was kind of well known around Bedford. And the guy on the right is his brother, Tom Me. And that was before I grew my sideburns.
Boy, you were a cute guy then.
And I was happy. That was my first toy. It was a used train. Like I say, I've always been fascinated with trains.
Yeah, you always have.
And sitting on an explosive box that my dad was dynamiting for build a highway north of Martinsville, and he'd bring home the empty boxes.
Oh, and so you're sitting on empty dynamite.
I'm on an empty.
Okay, I didn't know if your dad was mad at you, made you sit on a dynamite box or not. But this was empty. Okay, for the record.
And that was taken at the little log house that Dad had built for us after we moved out of the chicken house.
Okay. No, so this was really, when you got to move into it, is this this is a small picture. I'm hoping our people can see this. It may be too small, but we'll show it anyway. Is this the log house you're talking about?
We grew up in, yeah.
And this after you got out of the chicken house. So this must have been something to get to move into this.
And the little addition on the log house there was made from the depot from the railroad at Avoca. Dad took it down. We had enough lumber there to add another.
Where was this house located, Tom?
It was located on North Pike, just up out of Avoca there.
And so no signs again where this house was at?
It burned about 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. The house burned.
I bet you hated to see that.
Yeah, I think every one of us children tried to buy it, but we never could get it done.
Yeah. This is a great picture taken in 1942. Again, Tom, you're in this picture. Is this your brother Bob that was in
Yeah,
the
Brother Bob, he
picture?
was a submariner, and then that's me on the left, the Cisco kid, my sister in the middle, and my brother Joe on the right. And those were big days for us.
Where did he serve at in World War II?
He served in the Pacific.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
he and my other brother, both. The one was, he was a CB.
Yeah. Whenever, was he the only one of your brothers and your family that went to World War II?
My two older brothers went to World War II. Then,
Oh, you two.
and I went in later. There was four of us boys. Baby brother was a Marine. I was in the Army. Older brother was a submarine, and the other boy was a CB.
Yeah.
So,
And what did your folks think about when your brothers went off to World War II?
well, that was a hard time for us. There was a lot of things that went on, particularly in correspondence, censors, it took out things that might be, but we devised a way of talking about different animals on the farms or things that we could kind of keep track of them geographically. So we knew whether they were in the South Pacific or were in the South Pacific. If we talk about banty chickens, well, that would indicate a certain area, or the cow, it'd be a certain area. So my folks were able to keep track of where they were geographically all the time, which they couldn't write about. But it was always a big deal, and there was always a lot of worry whether they'd get back. In fact, in Avoca, there were two people lost in World War II. John Moore, which would have been my great-grandfather's grandson, and then Opal Franklin, my Aunt Mary's son, which would have been his great-grandson. So those were the only two casualties in Avoca, and they were mourned pretty heavily for that. Yeah.
And you knew both of those?
Yes, I grew up. Yeah, we grew up together.
That whenever we lose somebody, especially in a small community like that, it does affect the whole community, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Now, John Moore, he was in a bomber over Germany, and they shrapnel cut his oxygen from him, and when he landed back in England, while he was dead. And then my cousin Opal, he was that Zero plane blew up a destroyer that he was on at Okinawa. Those were.
Both of them brought back, or are they buried in Avoca?
Just the Moore boy was brought back. Of course, Opal died at sea.
Yeah. We have also a picture here. This is, I thought that one is a mother and great-grandmother, and I thought that the middle was Tom, but it's not.
I don't recognize that.
No, it's not Tom, is it? But your mother and grandmother.
Mother and grandmother, yeah. I suppose they were cooking a Sunday meal or something and needed a little more milk for a pudding or something, but they were.
It's a great picture.
They had run off to the dairy there.
You would happen to know about what year this picture would have been taken, would you, Tom?
Yeah, I believe I could. I'd say that'd be taken probably around 1921 or 22.
Yeah.
In Avoca.
Great picture. Great picture. And then again, this is a small picture. We're going to see if we can pick it up at all. Again, who are these folks?
Those were neighbor boys that we grew up together with there. We played together, built cabins together, played in the woods, rode bicycles, this and that.
Again, a great picture. I like this picture too. This is the last picture we have. This actually is a postcard, it looks like. That's what it says on the back here. But these people, because you can see the waterfall that we're familiar with. If you visit the Avoca Fish Hatchery, you can see this waterfall that's in this photo.
Yes.
And this photo would have been around about when, Tom?
I'm going to say somewhere around maybe 1907, maybe a little later, at the most 1950. Well, no, it would have to be around
1907.
Yeah.
So this would be about 100 years old. This photo then.
Yeah, it would be.
But you can still see the waterfall there.
See the waterfall, and you can also see where the mill race, where it was leveled on the head past it, where all the folks are standing there. And
so this is right in the vicinity where that mill would have been.
Yeah.
And this again, this is about 100 years old. And you know some of these. Did you know some of these pictures? I mean, people.
Oh yeah, there's my great aunt Edith May. It'd be well, probably a lot of you remember Bill Luce and Eva June Luce.
Sure.
Okay, that would be Neva June's mother. That would be my aunt.
Sure.
And,
Bill Luce, you mean the principal at Olytic for a lot of years? Yeah,
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And then there's Clint Hall, but I could go through her name, just about all of them.
Yeah. It's a great picture.
I was very fortunate to find that, yeah.
Tom, I want you to kind of talk about, we're going to have here in a couple or 3 weeks, we're having a show on urban legends here in Lawrence County, but you told me a good bear story. Can you tell our folks about that, the bear story?
Oh, yeah. My great-grandfather loved to fiddle, and in around the quarries, anybody that could play a musical instrument, he would room them, give them board and room free to have someone to pick with. And he brought this guy home one night, or one afternoon after work, and the guy had a pet bear with him, had him chained, and he brought the pet bear to the home. And my great-grandmother was extremely frightened. She knew the bear would get her and the children too. And by then she didn't care whether it got her husband or not. But anyway, as darkness approached, she got a lantern and put it where she could watch that bear at night, make sure it was fastened. And when the owner of the bear went to sleep, he blew out the lantern, put the light out. She noticed the light was out and went and lit the lantern again. Later he woke up and blew the light out again. And then she, later seeing the light out, lit it again. But when he woke the next morning, the gentleman with the bear told my great-grandfather that he had to leave right away. He couldn't stay there. Great-grandfather, kind of suspecting something was not right with him, asking what was wrong. He said, "This place is haunted. I'm not staying here. I'm getting out of here as quickly as I can." Granddad, what do you mean haunted? He said, well, I'd get up and blow that light out, and I'd no sooner get to sleep, and it would wake me up coming on again. And he said that went all night, and I'm not staying here. The ghost had me frightened.
That's a good story. That's a great one there. I like that one. Yeah. Tom, you also, you're a veteran. You were in the military in the 1950s. And were you here in the States? Did you go overseas?
Stayed here in the States all the time. Yeah, I didn't get to go overseas. Not that I wanted to, but it was just the way it worked out. I went to, took my basic training down in Arkansas, and then I went out to Fort Belvoir, Virginia. I wanted to be a draftsman, and I got into other things other than that, and I finished up out there and then came on home then after that was over with.
You know, a lot of people are not going to know, and I didn't know this until I believe that you showed me a picture, and I may be wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, but there was a picture of you and General Eisenhower. Is that right? Or at least you told me about a story or alluded to a picture.
He has given me some pictures. I have one of him at home. Yeah, he was I think a great person.
So you actually were a scribe to General Eisenhower, right? And which was President Eisenhower then?
We did in the social season. We did the invitations. Did calligraphy for those that we had. It's been a long time. We had congressional reception and military reception and diplomatic. 3 or 4 receptions that were. There'd be 500 or 600 people invited in, so you'd have to get invitations out to them, and they had to be done in, nice calligraphy and this and that, I suppose. But anyway, to do that in the winter months, and then in the summer months, the military aide, General Schultz, kept me busy. He was kind of looked after things that the president wanted looked after. We got to spend a little time up at Gettysburg, getting books and things ready for that, which reminds me of a little story. I had, if I got time, I don't know.
Well, we got time.
I had assembled all these books that Eisenhower liked Zan Grey books, and plus other kinds of things. But anyway, I had assembled a lot of books. I'm going to take them up to Gettysburg into his house up there, and I had a card file a gentleman from the Library of Congress had fixed for me. And he called one day and said he was bringing it over. So I'll meet you at the gate. And we got there, and he had 2 or 3, had more than he could carry, really. And being from Lawrence County, now if you didn't speak Lawrence County,
Yeah.
So I saw he was kind of struggling with it. I said, can I help you pack those? He said, they're already packed, but if you'd carry them, I certainly would appreciate it. So that was the first time I learned that people in Lawrence County don't speak exact proper English in the homes around that. But in growing up, we packed everything. We never carried anything.
Oh, okay. So. And I know where you're talking about, the Eisenhower Farm. I've been to Gettysburg several times, and he had a nice farm place there, and had his headquarters was right there in Gettysburg. I've stayed in the Eisenhower Hotel there, where he had actually a lot of meetings and so forth in the town of Gettysburg. But General Eisenhower was quite a historian as well, and he loved the Civil War period, loved studying that. Of course, he had a farm that Union and Confederate soldiers would have been trampling through at one time, but he was. So, how many times would you have met actually General Eisenhower?
Oh, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 times at the most.
And what was he like whenever you met him? What kind of person was he?
It depended on what was going on. He was around there. He was known as the boss, and that's what you took him in. He was what. He wanted things done, and then the General Schultz, he made sure they got done. But he was a jovial man. He was very serious in what he did, even in playing golf. I used to sit in my window and watch him out back. He had a little green there that he would putt a while, and then he would drive a while. But you could see that some things pleased him and things didn't please him. I was just another man, I guess you'd say.
But you found him pretty friendly at times.
He was very firm at times, and then he was also very pleasant at the time. He was.
I can remember a story about early part of, as a lot of my viewers know by now, that I've been a Civil War reenactor for a lot of years, but back in 1963, the early years of Civil War reenacting, they had the 100th centennial battle there at Gettysburg, and I actually talked to a guy that was in that event, and he said that they went through and they told him we're going to do an inspection of troops at noon, and that the general was going to inspect the troops. This was again 1963, and so they all lined up expecting one of the generals that was going to play Hancock or whoever was going to be Meade of the Battle of Gettysburg. But they were quite surprised when a car rode up and General Eisenhower stepped out. And he was the one that, and this, of course, this was a great honor for these guys to have General Eisenhower actually to inspect these Civil War reenactors. But that would live in your memory for a lot of years.
I appreciated getting to go up there and tromp around the cemetery a lot. My relatives from North Carolina lost one member of the family lost 3 sons there in that one day.
In Gettysburg.
Gettysburg. So it always had different reasons. It's had different meanings for me.
A fascinating place. Tom, you went on. You did a lot of things in your life, and you've had a lot of experiences. We're going to be wrapping up, but I know you can build log houses. You are a very good musician. You've helped me out several times as a musician, and you're excellent. You've played what instruments in your life? You play a lot of them, don't you?
Neva June Luce taught me to play the piano when I was 6 years old. Taught me to read the music. Then I kind of didn't want to do that. I wanted to play football, so I kind of passed that for a while. Then I learned to play the mandolin and then play the fiddle a little bit, the guitar, played the trumpet through high school band. But I've just always loved music. If I know nobody's listening, I like to sing if I know no one's listening.
Well, I would love to hear you sing. You've performed with a lot of different groups, and you've been recorded in actually a lot of different albums and so forth over the years, haven't you?
Done a few, yes. We've done a few around. But it's been fun, and it's been I've tried to do things that I've enjoyed in life. A lot of times that didn't work out just right.
Well, you are a very multi-talented person, and everybody that has ever met you, Tom, you've had a great story to tell. I have an interesting little a poem saying, what would this be?
I don't know. I was just kind of feeling a little nostalgia, and around home one evening I wrote that down. And the next day it was on the table. And the next day my sister was out, and she picked that up and took it. Well, I hadn't paid attention. And then later on she had that typed up and brought it back to me framed. But it was just kind of a running. I was thinking about my life, how it started out, and where I am today, kind of.
Well, you know, this is good. This was written by Tom, actually May 20th of 2000. I'd like to read this for you. I'd like for Mom to warm my blanket, help me say my prayers and tuck me in. And by the stove in the morn, have Dad to fit my socks just right before putting on my shoes again. I'd like to have my old desk of school with all my classmates there, and have my sister scrub my ears and comb and part my hair. I'd like to win a marble game and hit a home run or two. Teenage years, my first old car, and wouldn't I look good if it was new? Years went by, oh, where did they go? I don't move too fast. In fact, I'm rather slow. My memories are precious. I love them so. Our families and friends, things and places, my highs and lows. Of all the things in life I miss most, or might have been, I'd like to sit down and rest and rock my kids again. That's good, Tom. That's excellent. And you know, I kind of, you know, we do look back, and these people that are watching this program, I think that's why they watch this program, is that we go back and we look at those things. But you know, we do miss people that we've had in our lives. And
certainly do.
We look back that we've lost, and there's such. It doesn't have to be the holidays. It can be just something that happens during the day. You think, oh, you know, Grandpa used to say that. Grandma used to say that.
Yeah.
And we do miss these people.
Yeah.
That was a great poem.
Tom,
you obviously love Avoca. There is you told me that Avoca was named after a poem.
Yeah.
And you have that poem.
Yeah, I do. I mean,
I wonder if you'd mind reading that for us as we kind of start to wrap things up.
Okay, I'll read it. A poem written by a gentleman by the name of Moore, a Scottish fella, and supposedly a guy by the name of Foote, who was kind of prominent here in Bedford, liked that poem and would read it there at Avoca occasionally at the mineral springs. It's called The Meeting of the Waters. There is not in the wide world a valley so sweet as that vale in whose bosom the bright waters meet. Oh, the last rays of feeling and life must depart, ere the bloom of that valley shall fade from my heart. Yet it was not that nature had shed o'er the scene her purest of crystal and brightest of green. 'Twas not the soft magic of streamlet or hill. Oh no, it was something more exquisite still. 'Twas that friends, the beloved of my bosom, were near, who made every dear scene of enchantment more dear, and who felt how the best charms of nature improve when we see them reflected from looks that we love. Sweet vale of Avoca, how calm could I rest in thy bosom of shade with the friends I loved best, where storms that we feel in this cold world should cease, and our hearts, like thy waters, be mingled in peace. And supposedly that's how the little town of Avoca got its name, Avoca, from where the waters from the big spring and the waters from the creek mingle.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes,
What, in closing, how would you like people to remember you?
Just as a friend of those in Avoca and everywhere else I can find. I just like to be remembered as a friend.
That's good. Well, like I say, that people that have met Tom Kirkman, and now that you have, he's a fascinating fellow. We have found that on this program, I think everybody I've ever interviewed, they have a great story to tell. And every person has a story if we'll just take time to listen. I want to thank you for joining again another segment of the Lawrence County Oral History Project and Program. This is your host, Norm Taylor. We'll be seeing you soon.